Gentlemen, let me ask you something. Have you ever touched a woman and felt her body respond, yet somehow sensed her heart wasn't there? Or maybe you've shared a moment that felt passionate but faded too quickly, leaving you wondering why it didn't mean more. The truth is, most men focus on technique, but very few understand the art behind touch, the kind that doesn't just arouse her body, but awakens her soul. This isn't about being better in bed. This is about becoming unforgettable, the kind of man whose presence lingers in her mind long after the moment is over. Because when you know how to touch a woman, not just with your hands, but with your awareness, your patience, and your emotion, everything changes. She begins to feel you, not just physically, but energetically. She senses that your touch carries depth, not demand, connection, not control. Today's message is for men who are ready to move beyond the surface, men who want to turn casual intimacy into genuine connection and pleasure into something profound. You'll discover why your energy matters more than your experience, why slowing down can make her crave you even more, and why trust and presence are the secret ingredients to passion that never fades. So stay with me until the end of this video because what you're about to learn isn't just about attraction, it's about awakening. It's about learning how to touch her in a way that speaks directly to her heart. So she doesn't remember just the moment she remembers you. Touch is far more than a physical act. It is the oldest, most primal form of communication known to humanity. Before words, before reason, there was touch. For a woman, this language carries emotional weight. Her body doesn't respond only to pressure or warmth, it responds to meaning. The difference between a casual touch and one that awakens her lies in the intention behind it. When your hand meets her skin, her subconscious asks, "What does this touch say about how he feels about me?" If your touch says hurry, she tenses. If it says ownership, she guards herself. But if it says curiosity, care, and patience, she begins to unfold in ways that are both physical and emotional. Many men believe touch is a pathway to intimacy, but in truth, it is the mirror of it. A woman can feel your emotional state through your hands more clearly than she can through your words. If you are distracted, anxious, or self focused, your touch carries that message. But when you touch her with presence, when you slow down enough to feel the warmth of her skin, to notice her breathing, to match her rhythm, your touch becomes a silent promise. It tells her that you are there not to take, but to share. And that subtle shift changes everything. Touch can either awaken or numb. It can open doors to emotional depth or close them. The body records sensations like the heart records memories. It keeps the imprint of every experience, good or bad. This is why so many women crave touch that feels genuine, touch that tells her she's valued, respected, and desired for who she is, not just how she looks. When your touch carries that authenticity, her entire nervous system responds differently. Her breathing slows, her muscles soften, and her mind begins to let go of control. That's when connection begins, not when passion peaks, but when safety and desire intertwine. Touch also has a rhythm, much like music. It needs pauses, moments of stillness, and changes in intensity to become meaningful. The pauses allow her to feel, not just be stimulated. Those moments of stillness give her space to process sensation emotionally, which is what allows her to feel deeply connected rather than merely aroused. When you touch her with this awareness, you move beyond the act itself. You start communicating through energy, and energy is what the feminine truly responds to. In a world where everything is rushed, real touch feels revolutionary. It demands patience, focus, and empathy, qualities that are rare, yet magnetic. It teaches you to listen with your hands, to express appreciation without words, and to show strength without force. The man who understands this language doesn't just touch a woman's body, he reaches her heart. He doesn't need to prove his power because his gentleness already reveals it. True touch doesn't seduce, it awakens, it doesn't demand, it invites. And when a woman feels that kind of touch, she doesn't just remember it, She feels safe enough to respond to it with every part of her being. Emotional presence is the invisible force that turns simple physical contact into something unforgettable. A woman can sense immediately when a man is truly present with her, when his attention is not scattered, when his mind is not elsewhere, when he is not performing but genuinely feeling the moment. Presence is not about what you do with your hands, it's about what you communicate with your energy. It's the difference between touching her skin and touching her soul. When a man brings emotional presence to intimacy, every action slows down, every breath sinks, and she begins to feel emotionally seen. This is when her body starts to trust, to relax, to open. Because more than anything, what she desires is not perfection, but presence. In the absence of presence, touch feels empty. It may stimulate her body, but it never reaches her emotions. She might respond physically, but something will feel missing, like the music is playing, but the heart is silent. When you are present, however, the smallest gestures become powerful. The way you look at her, the way your fingers trace her skin, the way your breathing steadies, these moments tell her that you are not rushing to a destination. You are experiencing her. And that awareness is what turns attraction into connection. Presence begins with slowing down your thoughts. When you stop worrying about performance, outcome, or timing, your senses sharpen. You start to notice details: the warmth of her skin, the subtle movement of her breath, the rhythm of her pulse. You start responding to her body's cues instead of your own anticipation. And that shift is what creates electricity. When she feels that your focus is fully on her, her body responds with trust. She begins to feel safe enough to let her guard down because your energy tells her she is not being used, she is being understood. Science supports this too. Emotional presence activates deeper parts of the nervous system that link touch with feelings of connection and safety. When she feels your attention grounded and steady, her oxytocin levels rise, the hormone of bonding and emotional closeness. This isn't about fantasy, it's about physiology. The body mirrors what the mind feels. So when your mind is calm, your touch becomes calming. When your energy is warm and attentive, her body mirrors that warmth. It's a dance between energies, and presence is the rhythm that keeps both partners in sync. Most men think women want grand gestures, but often what she really wants is your attention, undivided, intentional, real. Emotional presence makes her feel that in this moment, nothing else matters. That feeling stays with her long after the physical experience fades. She remembers not just your touch, but the peace, excitement, and safety it carried. Because the truth is, the human heart doesn't crave stimulation, it craves connection. And when you touch her with presence, she doesn't just feel pleasure, she feels seen, valued, and desired in the most human way possible. That is what makes intimacy unforgettable. And that is what makes her keep coming back, not to the act, but to you. The power of slow is one of the most underestimated secrets in intimacy, yet it is the very thing that awakens a woman's deepest senses. In a world that glorifies speed and intensity, slowing down becomes an act of awareness, respect, and control. When touch moves too quickly, her body goes into a state of alertness rather than surrender. The nervous system interprets fast movements as stimulation, but not necessarily connection. Slowness, on the other hand, allows her mind to catch up with her body. It gives space for her emotions to blend with sensation, for anticipation to build, and for every nerve ending to fully awaken. This is where true intimacy begins, not in the rush of passion, but in the rhythm of patience. Slowness allows you to communicate through silence. Each movement becomes deliberate, meaningful, and attentive. When you slow down, you give her the gift of time: time to feel, time to breathe, time to trust. Most women don't crave constant action, they crave awareness. They want to know that every touch has intention, that it's not driven by impatience, but by curiosity. The slower you move, the more she can sense that you are there not just to please yourself, but to explore her. That exploration is what makes her body come alive in ways she didn't expect. The body reacts differently when touch is slow. The sensory receptors in the skin that respond to gentle, gradual pressure are directly connected to the emotional centers of the brain. That means slow touch literally sends signals of comfort, safety, and affection, not just arousal. This combination of physical and emotional stimulation allows her to feel grounded and excited at the same time. When you rush, the body only feels physical sensation. When you slow down, it feels emotion through the body. That emotional awakening is what separates a moment she enjoys from a moment she remembers. Slowness also builds anticipation, one of the most powerful triggers of desire. The space between each movement, each breath, creates tension, and that tension is what fuels passion. Anticipation is the art of not giving everything at once, of letting each touch carry mystery and progression. When done right, it becomes a conversation of sensation. She leans in because she wants to feel more, not because you've overwhelmed her. This is what keeps her engaged, curious, and emotionally connected. To move slowly is to be confident. It shows that you are not seeking validation, that you trust your rhythm and the connection unfolding between you. It shows mastery, not of her body, but of your own energy. The slower your pace, the deeper the impact. Because slow touch demands awareness, and awareness creates chemistry that speed can never replicate. When you take your time, she doesn't just feel pleasure, she feels safe enough to surrender to it completely. In that stillness, in that deliberate pace, her body and heart align. That is when casual intimacy transforms into deep connection, when every second feels like eternity and every touch feels like being truly seen. Trust is the foundation upon which all true intimacy is built, and for a woman, it is the bridge between emotional safety and physical openness. Without trust, touch feels mechanical, no matter how skilled or passionate it may be. A woman's body and mind are deeply interconnected, and when she senses genuine respect, patience, and emotional understanding, her body responds with a natural openness that no physical technique can create on its own. Trust tells her subconscious that it's safe to let go, to stop guarding herself, and to surrender to the moment without fear of being judged, rushed, or misunderstood. It is through this feeling of safety that real desire begins to awaken, not forced, but flowing freely from within her. When a woman feels that your touch carries sincerity rather than expectation, her nervous system relaxes. The walls she unconsciously builds to protect herself start to dissolve. She begins to respond not because she's supposed to, but because she wants to. That shift is powerful. Many men misunderstand this. They try to create attraction without first establishing trust. But for most women, trust is the attraction. It's the silent signal that allows her to feel emotionally connected, to open her heart, and to express her sensuality without hesitation. Trust is created not through grand gestures, but through consistency and emotional honesty. It's in the way you look at her without objectifying her, the way you listen without interrupting, the way you move slowly enough to let her set the pace. It's the tone of your voice, the steadiness of your breath, the patience in your presence. These small details tell her that she's not just a body. She's a person whose boundaries and emotions are valued. When that understanding exists, her arousal deepens, not because of stimulation alone, but because her body feels free to express itself naturally. Physiologically, this is just as true. When trust is present, her body releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that lowers anxiety and increases emotional closeness. Her heart rate steadies, her breathing deepens, and her mind becomes focused on the connection rather than on self protection. In this state, pleasure expands, sensations heighten, and emotional intimacy merges seamlessly with physical desire. It becomes less about performance and more about presence. Two people moving in harmony, responding to each other's unspoken cues. When trust is missing, even the most passionate touch can feel distant. When it's present, even the lightest touch can feel profound. That's the difference between being touched and being reached. A woman's deepest pleasure doesn't come from intensity, It comes from the safety to fully experience herself in your presence. Trust makes her feel that she doesn't need to hide her reactions, her emotions, or her needs. And when she feels safe enough to be her most vulnerable self, intimacy transforms into something sacred, a shared space where two people don't just meet physically, but connect emotionally and spiritually. That is the kind of intimacy that lingers long after the moment ends, not because it was wild or dramatic, but because it was real. Turning physical moments into emotional memories is what separates ordinary intimacy from something truly unforgettable. For most people, physical pleasure fades with time, but emotional experiences stay imprinted in the mind and body for years. A woman may forget what was said or even how long a moment lasted, but she will never forget how she felt in your presence. That emotional imprint is created not by intensity alone, but by authenticity, awareness, and emotional connection woven into every gesture and every breath. When touch becomes more than mechanical movement, when it carries empathy, attention, and sincerity, it transforms into memory. It's no longer about pleasure alone, it becomes about meaning. The human brain is wired to remember emotional experiences more vividly than physical sensations. When an intimate moment carries emotional resonance, it activates parts of the brain responsible for bonding, trust, and memory. That's why the most powerful encounters are rarely about what was done, but about the energy shared. When you touch her in a way that says, I see you, I value you, I'm present with you, she feels that emotional message through her entire nervous system. Her body remembers the feeling of safety, of warmth, of being genuinely desired, and that memory becomes a part of how she experiences you long after the moment has passed. To turn intimacy into emotional memory, it requires a shift from physical performance to emotional expression. Every action must carry intention, not the intention to impress, but the intention to connect. When you look at her and hold eye contact instead of rushing ahead, when you match her breathing and move in rhythm with her energy, you create a psychological state where the body and the heart are aligned. That alignment deepens trust and imprints the experience into her emotional memory. The moment becomes a story her body tells itself again and again, not through thought, but through feeling. This connection doesn't come from doing more, it comes from feeling more. The smallest moments often leave the strongest marks. A gentle hand on her face, the sound of her name spoken softly, the stillness after a shared breath. These are the details that stay in her memory because they carry emotional weight. When she feels that your touch isn't about control, but about appreciation, it becomes something sacred. Her body translates it as love, not just lust. And that emotional recognition transforms what could have been a fleeting encounter into a deep, lasting bond. True intimacy is not measured by the time spent together, but by the emotional depth achieved within it. When touch becomes a form of communication that says, you are safe, you are desired, and you are understood, it stays with her. It becomes a reference point for what real connection feels like. That is what makes her think of you even when you're not there, not because of what you did, but because of how you made her feel. In that space, intimacy becomes timeless, and physical moments evolve into emotional memories that shape the way she experiences love, trust, and connection forever. True intimacy isn't about what happens between two bodies, it's about what happens between two souls. It's the way you make her feel safe enough to open, seen enough to trust, and cherished enough to surrender. The touch that awakens her is not about technique or performance. It's about awareness, patience, and emotional depth. When you bring presence to your touch, when you move with intention instead of impulse, when you listen to her body like it's a language waiting to be understood, you stop being just a lover. You become an experience she'll never forget. Every woman desires to feel connected on a level that goes beyond the physical. She wants to feel your energy, your care, your honesty in every gesture. That's what transforms casual intimacy into deep connection, when your touch doesn't just stimulate her body, but speaks to her heart. Remember, the body forgets what is rushed, but it remembers what is felt. If your touch can carry trust, respect, and emotion, you don't just awaken her senses, you awaken her soul. So take what you've learned today as more than advice, take it as an invitation. Slow down, be intentional, and create moments that mean something. Because real connection isn't about how long it lasts, it's about how deeply it's felt. And when you master that kind of presence, you'll never have to chase passion again. It will naturally find its way back to you. Thank you for staying until the end of this message. I hope it reminds you that real intimacy begins with emotional awareness and ends with connection that can't be faked. Wishing you clarity, confidence, and compassion as you continue growing, not just as a partner, but as a man capable of true connection. Good luck. And remember, when your touch comes from the heart, it will always be felt in hers.